welcome back to the Command Your Brand show. I'm your host, Jeremy Ryan Slate, the CEO of Command Your Brand. We help CEOs and founders to get their messages out on top-rated podcasts. You can grab our new book, ranked #1 in PR on Amazon, at bestpodcastbook.com. Reminder before we get into this conversation to comment on, like this video, and smash the subscribe button if you want to command your brand. And today I'm very excited for the conversation we're going to have today because we're getting into something that I don't get to talk a lot about, and that's design and how that can actually affect your life in a really positive way. So I'm excited to have Mahwish Syed with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeremy.
So for people that may not be familiar with you and who you are, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I am an interior designer. I call myself a design goddess because I've done jewelry design. This is a piece of mine, fashion design. And I'm sitting at the crossroads, which is an exciting crossroads to be at, having had my own firm for over 20 years. What I'm doing right now is creating spaces that are actually healing. Not just beautiful, but I realized the connection between beauty and healing is a pretty big one. And I'm like, Magellan trying to explore this uncharted terrain.
Well, I think something people don't consider, right? And I think when you get it, is like the real connection of aesthetics to something like very like spiritual and something very real, right? Like I think oftentimes like the beauty in things, it has so much value that we don't consider. Is that something you've thought of?
Oh my God, completely. Because beauty is not just skin deep, and you hit the nail on the head right away. The spiritual connection, the quantum connection. So I'm also circadian-certified, and I've studied quantum biology, and I link all that wisdom with my designs. Beauty is healing. It literally changes your brain waves. And neuroaesthetics is a really exciting new science which links the arts with our biology and the idea that your environment affects you. Obviously, we'll talk about my own cancer experience and how that prompted that. But I am living proof that beauty can heal you.
So let's talk about that then. As you mentioned, your journey, your book is called Purgatory to Paradise, and it does delve into that journey and how that changed things for you. So let's talk a bit about that. How did your cancer journey change, your viewpoint on design and that intersection point?
Great question. I basically realized while I was going through my cancer journey that beauty, and I was spending so much time at home, and I started redecorating. I started changing things. And from an epigenetic standpoint, 2/3 of cancers are actually not about your genes. They're beyond your genes. They're your environment. They're your lifestyle. They're your mental state. And I started really investigating what around me was toxic. Literally, in terms of relationships, in terms of environment and things I was eating and drinking and all of that. So I feel
Can I ask what made you look at that? Because that's really intuitive. I don't think that's something everybody would look at. Like a lot of people would look at that and say, oh, poor me, this happened to me, or whatever it may be. Like I know, so in my family, I'm in good shape, but colon cancer runs through my family. So like everybody's like, oh, at some point in time, you're just going to get it. And I guess like looking at it, like you don't have to have that viewpoint. I guess for you, what made you look at it differently?
Because I didn't see myself as a victim. I didn't. And in my book, I actually aligned with the story of Persephone, which is the goddess of the seasons.
Oh my! So you're gonna laugh at this. So we're expecting our next child, and we'd like to be surprised if it's a boy or a girl. So we were with our first two, and we've been going back and forth. If it's a boy, I really like the name Stetson. But we've been going back and forth with my master's is in ancient history, so we can go back and forth between Anastasia and Persephone. And the thing I was so worried about is like, I don't want this kid going to kindergarten and everybody calling her Persephone. But anyway, continue.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I'm getting chills. Totally chills. Okay.
I studied Roman emperor worship and then a lot of like Hellenistic culture.
We have to, that's a whole other podcast there. That is amazing. I also studied classics
Wow, there we go.
and anthropology of religion. So I absolutely adore the word Persephone and the message of her. I think you'd really enjoy my book. Persephone is somebody that I started bonding with when I was 9 years old. Believe it or not. That's when I was introduced to Greek mythology. And I write about that in my book. So she is all about the cycles of life and death. And I think as a society, we are taught to be afraid of death. And death is cast as the villain. And so I use the analogy of Hades being my cancer, who took me down into the underworld. But he was also Persephone's lover and her very devoted husband. So in that way, we danced the tango. And basically the lessons that I learned while I was going through cancer were my pomegranate seeds that I willingly ate. So that's the analogy that I used. And I think Persephone is a lovely, lovely name. I actually designed dress collections in my East Village shop that were called the Persephone series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I see the thing I love about that, because if people don't know, Persephone is the daughter of Hera and Zeus, and she's kidnapped by Hades.
Demeter.
She's brought to the underworld, and the 6 months ish of the year that we don't have good weather is when she's in the underworld, and the 6 months that she's here is when we have good weather. So that's where that idea comes from. And I guess like looking at that, then how did that change your viewpoint on design? And I guess, how are you doing health-wise now?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for asking. And in terms of that analogy, so we commute between life and death. Our cells are recycling all the time. Our organs are regenerating all the time. We're actually sleeping at night. That's our underworld at night. We're in the darkness and we need the darkness. And on a psychological level, I think it's really important to embrace all these feelings. I'm not trying to, sugarcoat cancer whatsoever. Right. I was very, very, very upset and in a lot of fear. And I think having gone through and welcomed all the stages of that level of grief, of not having the kind of future I thought I was going to have, because tomorrow may never come. You don't know. So I think it's important to state that. And what I did at that time was realize that I had agency. And that's the most core answer I can give you, is that we are in our most divine essence. We are in control of our lives as much as we can be. Yes, we dance with the things that are out of control, but that's what life is. We take the lessons and we keep going. And I think with cancer, what allowed me to not look at myself as a victim was I was curious. I wasn't going to say, oh, well, just bad things happen to good people. Let's figure this out. Let's investigate. I didn't have the genetic marker. So I was like, okay, well, what caused this then? Let me explore it. That's just my nature. I'm incredibly curious.
So what did that process look like for you then? You mentioned you start, changing, like, I guess, like, what did you start with? You mentioned changing people, changing environments. Like, what things did you start with? And how did you know, for you, how were you like, okay, this is working, I'm making progress, I need to, keep going down this path?
So here's the thing. I started looking around my home and I'm a super nerd. I read journals all the time before bed. So
I think we would get along when it comes to that.
So I looked around and, I had Teflon frying pans. I went, let's research this. I did, and this is what I have in my course, which is called Claim Your Paradise, a list, an audit list that you can use and go through and find which things around your home are invisible toxins that you don't even realize.
Which ones were the most surprising to you? You mentioned the Teflon. Like that's a big one, especially like when it starts peeling, because then it's getting in your food. Like
mine was spectacular. I had the best, highest end set of pots that I used. Nothing was wrong with them. I had to throw them away. It wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. The other thing, Jeremy, which would surprise you and maybe not, anything synthetic in terms of your area rugs. Even what's covering like the pad underneath your area rugs. If it isn't synthetic.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because it releases VOCs. Carpeting any kind of carpeting that isn't natural, like isn't natural 100% wool or hemp or something, will release VOCs for years.
What are VOCs for people that may not know that?
Volatile organic compounds.
Okay.
So like benzene, formaldehyde, trichloroethylene. So it's really crazy. I break it all down, and I also talk about another thing, which is circadian rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
So they're realizing that cancer is related to your mitochondrial dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And what affects your mitochondria is, and this is an interior designer talking, but I feel like we need to realize that our relationship to the sun, which has also been villainized, is really important. You need natural sunlight on your skin and on your eyes in order to set your circadian rhythm. Sunrise in the morning. So how do you design that from an interior designer standpoint? Well, living in New York, I've had clients who never raised their shades for privacy's sake or whatever. So the simplest thing and the simplest tip is to open your windows. Sunlight is not polarized. So by even just opening your windows a smidge, even in your car, you're getting the benefits of starting the cascade, the biological cascade that we need to have to be able to be healthy.
Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting because I've still got my attention on the carpets. Like that's really interesting. So like, because I know in my house, like growing up, it was like carpets everywhere. It was kind of gross because like we had cats. But anyway, in my house now, my wife is like very into hardwood floors. So our house is like it's 100-year-old farmhouse. All the hardwood floors are like super, super old. And then she's very particular about where she gets her carpets. I'm curious because obviously like you're a designer, so I'm sure you've already had like a certain way you shopped, but has this also changed for you, like how you're obtaining the things in your home?
Well, in a weird way. So my background, I worked in the textile department at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So I was always interested in textiles. Mm-hmm. I was just generally a textile snob. So I tended to have just 100% wool or silk or jute or linen already. It just really gave me the evidence, the hard scientific evidence to stay more anchored in all the things I've always practiced. So when, there's viscose out there or bamboo silk, which is code for something synthetic, do not use it. It is cheaper, but why, you spend a little bit more and you gain your health back. I mean, I think your health is invaluable. Mm-hmm. And we don't realize that when we, for the sake of convenience, I think your wife is on the right track with her carpet. I'm just curious, what is she like?
My wife, in terms of like, what is she like as a person, or what does she enjoy?
What kind of carpet is she looking for?
You'd have to ask her. This is out of my ballpark. She's a super crunchy mom, so she knows everything about everything that's going in our kids' bodies, and we have chickens, and so it's like she's very particular about what she wants, and I let her handle that, and I just say, yes, honey, you're right.
I love that. I would love to speak with her. I actually researched having chickens in Manhattan.
Cool. That sounds really hard to do.
It is.
Well, I'm in Northwest Jersey, so everything's like very like, I don't know, it's kind of like living in Ohio or something like that. So it's like, we have 24 chickens, I have a pig, we have, 5 acres. So it is a little bit of different style. But I guess when we're looking at, so we talked about what should come out of your home, Mahwish, but like what things should you be doing with it once you've removed the things that shouldn't be there? Like what things should we be doing design wise to set up a healthier environment?
Oh my gosh, where to begin? Okay. So let's go back to the idea of beauty. Your aesthetics matter. Colors, I think, are one of the most cost-effective ways to change your environment and to create mood, right? And so I talk about, not just trends, but like, what did you love as a kid? Like, what colors did you love when you were 6 years old? Mm-hmm. And to kind of get back to...
I was always blue when I was a kid, so...
What kind of blue? What shade of blue?
Like a dark, like royalish blue, like that type of color. Yeah, right. Like similar to that, like maybe a little bit darker.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. So that is about expansion. And it's also related to the unknown and the idea of the unexpected. So it's really all about that. Yves Klein, I wrote in my book, he did a series of Venus statues that were, he patented his own shade of blue. You should look at it. I think it's right up your alley, Jeremy.
So I guess like looking at it then, you know, what things design wise should people have in their homes that maybe they're not considering? Like, you know, what type of plants should we be looking at? Like what type of, you know, things I'm not considering, like what should people be having in their homes?
Biophilia is a lovely, lovely preoccupation of mine. I've always had plants inside, and NASA has a list, which then I kind of took the top 10 from that list, which are the most easy to manage and in all shades and lights you could use. And they are air filtration machines that have been doing it for millions of years. So they're a lot better at it than we are. As much as I like to, you know, say we have all these inventions, I think when we look to nature, I think it's really important. The other thing is to create a room, especially before bed. As we talked, you have to create a room that is devoid of blue light. Mm-hmm. So no screens. I don't believe in a TV in your room. I don't believe in screens, any kind of iPad or any other blue screens. And lighting is really, really, really important. Even now that we have to.
How do you feel about Wi-Fi along with that too? Is that something that should be like off at night too?
Completely. Okay. Wi-Fi, absolutely. And, you know, no AirPods, everything. I mean, we're going back to like being wired again, because we don't realize in our rush and enthusiasm to embrace these new technologies, we don't really know the ramifications. And we're living in a toxic soup of Wi-Fi and, you know, our modern life robs us of our electrons. Mm-hmm. So we have to ground ourselves, going outside, going barefoot. You're so lucky you have, you know, your 5 acres, I think, walking around on the grass, which I still do in the winter. Mm-hmm. Is really important.
How much does, because like if you think about it, like sure, our bodies take up space too, right? And that's part of the space that we're in. How much does like, I guess, clothing style and things like that, like how much does that level of design matter to, I guess, the aesthetic we're creating to create a healing environment?
Oh, the materials matter. So certain fabrics have a frequency and synthetics rob your body of its electrons. So cotton and wool and linen. Actually, wool and linen have the highest frequency, but when you wear them together, they cancel each other out. So one or the other, by the way. So it's, again, pay attention to the materials that are against your skin, mm-hmm. because a lot of the synthetics, they're like a sponge for toxins, and your skin is your largest organ, and you're absorbing those toxins through the clothing. I mean, phthalates, for example.
How do you balance, because you mentioned ear pods and things like that, how do you balance, like, I guess, modern conveniences and things that are like, okay, that makes life a little bit simpler with, you know, things that are, you know, going to be better for our health?
How do I balance that every day?
Yeah, like I guess, like, do you have like a, you know, maybe a time period of you're like, I'm going to wait and see on this thing and then we'll see if it's good, or is it more of a research, or like, how do you balance those things?
No, because I'm very intuitive.
Okay.
I'm very intuitive. And I think it's really important for each person to be empowered in their intuition. Yes, science, the studies are they're lagging. I mean, what I'm talking about, in 10 years, they'll be, you know, happening more, but why not? We don't have the grace of that time. And I think cancer has definitely taught me to be a little bit more confident, actually, mm-hmm. in following my intuition, because instead of waiting around for evidence of it, you know, obviously everyone's telling you not to drink out of plastic bottles, but at the same time, you need to filter your water because it's full of pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. So looking and just taking a step back at the bigger picture and not being reactive mm-hmm. is really key, but taking a step back and kind of being calm about it and not just like, oh my God, I know a lot of people complain about like, what can't you do? Everything's toxic.
It can be like overwhelming though, right? Because it's like, okay, well, how old are the, like, cause like I said, I live in an old house. My father-in-law and I replaced a lot of the pipes in here. It's like, all right, well, how old are your pipes? And then where does your water come from? And then when I moved in, we had to put a blue light filter to handle the bacteria that was in our well. So it's like, there definitely is, like, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And I guess when you look at that overwhelm, like, how do you confront the overwhelm? Like how do you decide what's most important to handle?
I think you start with what's easiest and what's achievable, right? I mean, say, for example, I had someone say to me, well, you're living in New York. There's a lot of Wi-Fi. You should move out. I'm like, not possible. I'm sorry. But, you can have a healthy life wherever you are. And I think you can do things to mitigate that. But work with things that feel good for you. Whatever feels good for you now, try it. See how you like it. And if you change your mind, you change your mind. But to be rigid is to break. So be flexible and be open to trying something new for a day and just make an assessment for yourself. I would say that.
Very cool. Well, Mahwish, I've really enjoyed this conversation. For people that are listening, they want to find out more about what you're doing. You also mentioned your book. Where's going to be the best place for our listeners to find you?
It's msd-ny.com. That's my website. And also, if you're interested in a list of the top 3 things, I have a wonderful gift. It's at claimyourparadise.com/opt-in.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to be grabbing that because you've really gotten my attention today. So I appreciate you being on today. Once again, everybody, thanks for checking us out. Reminder to subscribe to this channel, like this video, leave us a comment, let us know what you thought, and we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.